Hi everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, I'm joined by Marc Ferrari, guitarist for Keel and Cold Sweat. Marc will share with us some exclusive information about what those bands have in store for us in the year 2023. You're not going to want to miss that information. It's here exclusively for you guys. He'll also share some really interesting stories about what it was like writing and recording with Criss. He'll give us the inside scoop on the song 5-Card Stud on Ace Frehley's Trouble Walking album. I think that story is going to really surprise a lot of Ace Frehley fans. He'll talk about what it's like being friends with Tommy Thayer, working with Gene Simmons, and so much more. There's so much to cover in this episode. I know you guys are going to really enjoy it. So let's jump in and let's get started. Well, Marc, I would just want to thank you for joining the show today. This is really exciting to me. I know it's the first time for you on the show, and I really looking forward to our conversation today. You've done a lot, so welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We got a lot to cover, I think, in this conversation because you look over your career and you've accomplished a lot, whether it is in music, publishing, writing books, TV shows and movies, right? You've really done it all. But before we even get into all of that, why don't we just start at the beginning for a moment here? So when did you first get a guitar and when was your first band? At what age?
Well, first guitar happened when I was 9. I got a guitar for my 9th birthday. The summer before that, I picked up the guitar for the first time at a cousin's house. And I was so enamored by it that that was my big request for my 9th birthday. So got my first guitar when I was 9 and, took to it like a duck to water, of course. That was my big passion. And started actually playing in bands when I was 13, 14 years old. Wow. I remember having bands in junior high. And, I was always kind of the leader of the band, even though I was the youngest. So at that point in time, I was living in Western New York up near Buffalo. And where I saw my first concert in Niagara Falls, which was Kiss. I just mentioned that I was admiring your Kiss ball machine. And then I see Ace Frehley on the we can talk about that because I wrote a song on one of Ace's albums.
I know that 5-Card Stud. We'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah. So guitar for me happened pretty early, and it was just continual. It was just a continual passion and devotion to the instrument. Back in those days, there's no internet. There's no there's not the same amount of distraction that everybody has these days. So for me, it was my focus. That was my love, I guess I'm kind of glad I grew up in that era because, it forced me into that passion,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now you were saying you got your first guitar at 9. Did your parents buy that for you, I guess?
Yeah. But then 3 years later, I actually bought my first electric guitar when I was 12, and I earned money by doing stuff like shoveling snow, which were an abundance of snow up there in Western New York, and picking out garbage for folks and raking leaves and that kind of stuff. Paper route, I remember, But I saved up enough to buy my first guitar at 12, electric guitar at 12 years old, which was a Guild Starfire. They don't make those models anymore, but it's similar to a similar body shape to Gibson ES 335.
Yep.
So that was my first electric, and then from there on, it was on the Les Pauls.
That's awesome. Now, you said that you were growing up in upstate New York. At some point, though, you moved out to California, right? And that's where your career started to take off. How supportive were your parents when you were saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to do music as a career. I'm moving out to California.
Well, my mom in the other room, she's visiting me.
Oh, wow. So we'll only say good things then.
Hey, Mom. I gave you a plug, Mom. Anyways, my folks were always very supportive. I'm doing an interview. You want to come in and meet the interviewer? You can meet Mama Ferrari here.
There we go. I love it. Hey, Mama Ferrari, how you doing?
Yeah.
We were just talking about when he got his first guitar.
Yeah. So
it was 8 years old.
9.
9?
I think it was 9.
I think it was 8.
You think it was 8? Well, there you go. I stand corrected. I was 8.
It's in his blood.
Of course, absolutely. Bye-bye. Nice to meet you.
Right.
Nice meeting you.
Yes.
Okay. So, anyways, my parents were extremely supportive of me.
That is awesome.
Fast forward to my high schoolers, I actually did really good in school. I was my class salutatorian, which meant I was, second.
Mm-hmm.
I had a salutatorian in my class. I had actually earned a 4-year scholarship to use in the New York State college system. And I decided to put that on hold and go join a rock band in Boston and go wash dishes, to support myself. So they didn't understand the logic of that initially, but, to their credit, they allowed me to follow my dream. It was my life, my path, my dream. And they supported me 100% to it. So.
Well, I'd say definitely that educational background makes sense now when we talk about some of the stuff that you did later on in your career. Now I'm seeing that connection a little bit.
Well, I actually did not apply myself in high school very much because I was leading rock and roll lifestyle even then. We were playing weekends, and had I known I was going to finish so high, I might have applied myself to be number one. But I didn't even know I was my class salutatorian until like the last week of school.
Wow,
it was quite disappointing. Yeah.
That's awesome. So now when you get out to California, and obviously the first you came on most rock fans' radar was when you were in Keel. So talk about how you connected with Ron and how did you meet him initially?
Well, that introduction happened through our mutual friend, Mike Brunn, who started Shrapnel Records and had a column in Guitar Player magazine that he featured. Every issue, he would feature 2 or 3, up and coming guitar players, or bass players, in the case of Billy Sheehan. So I submitted a tape to Mike when I was 17, I think, and although he didn't feature me, we became pen pals right away. And interestingly enough, a couple months before I moved out to California, I reached out to Mike to let him know I was coming. And he sent me a care package of some of his albums that he had just released. One of them was the Steeler album.
Sure.
And fast forward to January of '84, I moved out to LA. I moved out there to join 3 other guys I had a cover band with in Boston. They moved out ahead of me. And I ran into Mike Brunn at a store, and I recognized him. I recognized him, and by that point in time, my 3 buddies were already moving back to Boston. They had run out of money. They were getting discouraged, and they were moving back. But I stuck it out, and I ran into Mike, and Mike introduced me to Ron. And that's how that collaboration started all those years ago.
That's awesome. And, like you said, Ron had the album Steeler. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Ron was, selling, he was a big star here on the LA scene. Steeler was, selling out huge venues, country club, all over the place. So, Ron had a big name. Although Steeler was such a revolving door of musicians. I think that was one reason why they never got a major label deal.
Right.
Yngwie
Right.
left pretty quickly. The album came out, and there were other guitar players in there in Steeler. I think probably 3 or 4 other guitar players in Steeler. And I actually went to the last Steeler show with Ron down in San Diego. This would have been like March of '84.
Right.
So I attended the last show that Steeler played.
That is awesome. So now, obviously, Ron, like you were saying, had a little bit of a name for himself. He starts Keel. You come along. The first album, Lay Down the Law, is mostly songs written by him. However, there is one song of yours, Born Ready, on that album. So talk about that song.
Yeah, well, it's kind of semi-autobiographical, I guess. That was, that my motto: just be ready for anything. You never know when something is going to come your way, and you want to be prepared for it. So, obviously, it's a kind of a very AC/DC-ish sounding song. Pretty simple. We weren't doing different time changes and key changes and everything. My roots, the stuff that I grew up listening to, 70s stuff in general, was very riff based.
Yep.
I'm a huge AC/DC fan. Saw Bon Scott twice.
Oh wow!
And so that song definitely has got a very AC. It's more hard rock rather than metal. I think.
Yep. Absolutely.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
that was the first song that I had on any of the Keel albums, and my writing developed. I wouldn't say that Lay Down the Law. I was still coming into my own as a writer.
Sure.
And Ron really pushed me. He's a riff meister too. So
Yep.
and we were, in our later albums, kind of competing with each other. But that it's all good. What's that expression? High tide raises all ships, right?
Right. So he was very supportive of you, because I know, obviously, as the albums progressed, it got to the point that the third album, I think you had the lead single from that album, if I remember right.
Tears of Fire, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And Right to Rock was was a great collaboration. That was essentially my riff.
Was it really?
With a little help from Kenny and Ron's lyrics. So that was a great example of collaboration.
Yep.
But come the Final Frontier, I think I wrote 3 or 4 songs on that album.
Yep.
But Ron and I definitely, we always wanted to make sure that the song won.
That's the way to do it. Now you mentioned the album Right to Rock. You mentioned that you were a Kiss fan growing up, and then all of a sudden Gene Simmons comes in as the producer. So how does that happen? And you, as a Kiss fan beforehand, how excited were you when you heard he was going to be producing the album?
Oh, I was over the moon. How it happened was through a relationship through the guy that owned our label. Our label at the time was Gold Mountain. Danny Goldberg was the president. Danny's had quite the history, but he came from the publicity world. He was Led Zeppelin's publicist, and he actually ran Swan Song. For those of you who want to Google Danny Goldberg, but he had the relationship with Gene. I think Kiss was a client of his a while ago, and had maintained that relationship. And we were all ecstatic to work with Gene. We knew of the guys that were available to us at that time, and he was the natural choice. He was a musician. Obviously he had the cachet of being in one of the biggest bands in the world.
Sure.
And and he believed in us very early on. The demos, the demo for the Right to Rock was the one that convinced him to do our album. But yeah, we were actually recording the Lay Down the Law album up in Northern California, and we were just getting sounds. Ron was co-producing that album with the engineer, and he was to say, just play something so we can get a sound. And I just went in. I don't know, that riff just came out of thin air. I just started in on it, and fortunately he recorded it.
Right.
And that's that was the demo of the Right to Rock that Ron played for Gene, and Gene said, "Yes, I'm going to produce this album,
Right.
and we're going to start in 2 weeks."
Right, which is
quick.
amazing. Right, that's amazing. Now, again, you were saying before about your first concert in Niagara Falls, and if I'm not mistaken, Kiss was actually your first concert, right, in Niagara Falls?
Yeah, April of '76. They had just started on the. They were doing a combination of the live album and Destroyer.
Right.
So I think they must have played some songs off Destroyer then. Detroit Rock City and so on. But yeah, there's a couple of great websites out there that have like every Kiss date, and the set list. So I found it, and it actually was the first week or two of the Destroyer tour.
Amazing.
But prior to that, they were still touring on the live album.
Right. And then I think the next year you said you saw them on the Lick It Up tour as well. Not the Lick It Up, the Love Gun. Sorry, Love Gun, not Lick It Up, obviously.
It must have been Love. Yeah, I saw them in '76 and '77. So '77 must have been either Love Gun or Rock and Roll Over, maybe.
Right.
Little foggy.
Right.
But I saw them in '76, '77.
Right. So I love to bring that up right there because, that's 76, 77, and you're a fan in the arena watching, and it's less than 10 years later, and there's the Demon himself producing your album with you, right? So are you nervous, like, oh my God, here's this guy that I, looked at as a kid and looked up to, and now he's producing my album? Or was there just excitement for you?
Well, it was a little of both. I mean, we were all a little intimidated by him. He's got a silly side to him too, but when you first meet him, he's pretty serious. He's all business.
Right.
And we knew that we knew that this was a real important. This was our first major label album.
Right.
And you only get that first chance to make that first impression. So
absolutely.
He lightens up. He's got a silly side to him too.
Right.
So
Right.
It made us feel at home.
Right. Well, you talk about making a first impression, and obviously you did, because the band was voted the best new band. I think it was Circus Magazine, Rock Scene, Metal Edge. So you guys must have been feeling really good when you see, you're beating some of your peers that are just coming out at that time, the Dawkins of the world and those other bands. You guys are voted best new bands.
Yeah, in Circus, we actually beat Bon Jovi.
Right.
That's the only time that Keel appeared above Bon Jovi. And up supporting Bon Jovi, but yeah, a lot of folks seem to forget that we came out of the box pretty strong. We did win these Best New Band awards and all these huge magazines that I used to read as a kid. So.
Yep. Now, you said before that you had to start recording the album right away, and at least I've read stories that Gene wanted to start right away because the Asylum tour was going to start, and he'd fly in, produce for the weekend, fly back out, do some shows or whatever, back and forth. Did you feel at times maybe a little preoccupied? Is that story wrong? Was he with you guys 100% of the time?
Well, he was always doing stuff. And he was also doing films at the time too.
True.
He did that because we were actually extras in one of his films called Never Too Young to Die. You guys gotta Google this one. I think it was John Stamos and Vanity. And
I'll just say this: if somebody hasn't seen it, just be warned.
Yeah, there's the Aphrodite in the film. So yeah, I mean, look, Gene had stuff going on, and so yeah, we had to be efficient and quick. And I remember there were starts and stops, in our recording process, and I remember finishing some of it off in New York, because we had to go where he went,
Right.
He was doing a shoot in New York. We had to figure out a way to, work our way in there,
Sure. One of the things I wondered as I look at your career and all the things you did, after Keel, did you learn anything on the business side from working with Gene during those early years of your career?
Well, yeah, publishing, I was always a kid of music publishing and stuff. And, Gene was always moguling, he is the mogul, I think he's a businessman in a rock star's, rock star suit, that's what he is. But, and Gene was, always and very focused, and he didn't drink, he didn't party, that's his deal, but I think you learn to respect the business end of things being around somebody like that.
Sure.
And let's not forget, as Frank Zappa once said, there's more business than music in the music business.
That is so true.
You got to have that part of it covered.
Right. So do you own the publishing then from the songs you wrote with Keel? Like the Right to Rock, do you still own the publishing?
Well, it reverted back to us, and this is maybe 3-4 years ago.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, we actually do own our publishing now. So
that's awesome. So like we said, the band was taken off and you guys toured with a bunch of big name bands during the years, right? So I think it was Dio, Quiet Riot, Aerosmith, and Van Halen you played a show with, Bon Jovi we'll talk about in a moment. But especially Dio and Quiet Riot, where both, Kevin and Ronnie sadly have passed. What do you remember about touring with those guys?
Well, I'll start with Dio because that was our first time going to Europe. And, what an amazing experience. First of all, opening up for arguably the greatest hard rock heavy metal singer of all time. You put Rob Halford in there too, yes, but and such a total pro and such a guy that was so passionate about his music and about his fans. So that was an amazing experience. Just going to Europe for the first time. First time as a band. I'd been there before, but playing in all these countries, it's just an amazing experience. Quiet Riot was a little different. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Mama Ferrari's busy in the kitchen there.
There you go. Nice.
The Quiet Riot was in '86, and unfortunately, their audience was dwindling at that point in time. They were several years off their high, and Rudy wasn't with them. Chuck Wright was with them, and internally, I think those guys were not getting along. The venues were getting smaller and smaller, and look, we go where we're told. We'll play with anyone, anywhere. Sure. So for us to be on, we were still building our fan base at the time. So for us to be on a tour was great. We were supposed to tour with Metallica.
Well, you really?
That or not?
No, I did not. When was that?
Yeah, we were also in '86, and I actually have a poster with us it resurfaced on Facebook recently. But we were scheduled to do dates with Metallica, and James Hetfield broke his wrist, and that tour was canceled. Our trajectory might have been a little different had that thing, had that tour gone on.
Now that's interesting because that's obviously during their early days when they were really a thrash band more than anything. So how do you think your music and theirs would have, gelled on a night?
Well, I think, look, anybody who knows Keel knows that we have a couple different facets to us. We got the super duper heavy side, the Speed Demons and the Tonight's Your Minds and, songs like that. And then we've got the more commercial side to us. So I think we probably would have skewed, our set list a little differently. Sure. But I can tell you back in the day, we would have taken on anybody, we weren't afraid of going out there with those guys. We were looking forward to it.
That's awesome. You did end up touring with Aerosmith on their big reunion tour, if I'm not mistaken, right? The Done With Mirrors tour?
No, I have to correct you on that.
Okay, please do so.
We only did one date with Aerosmith.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
We only did one date. 1986 was our peak year,
Sure.
in terms of touring, because we went to Europe, we went to Japan. We did this huge. We did the Texas Jam in '86.
Yep.
We did the South Stadium show with Aerosmith and Yngwie in '86. We did the Quiet Riot tour in '86. Just a lot was happening in '86.
Sure.
But we never toured with Aerosmith.
Okay, I thought it was more than one show. I thought it was a handful of shows. So I thank you for correcting me on that.
I wish it was more dates with Aerosmith.
Sure.
I actually saw Aerosmith 3 weeks ago in Vegas as
did you?
Brad Whitford's gift. Kiss and Aerosmith are two bands that I've seen over the course of 6 decades.
Amazing.
70s, 80s, 90s, zeros, ones, and 2020s. 6 decades. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. Those guys, the longevity. those two bands have had.
That is amazing. I guess I could say the same for Kiss, but not Aerosmith. The first time I saw them were the 80s. So I only got 5 decades there. So that's awesome.
There you go.
Now, the first time I saw Keel was 1987. You guys opening up for Bon Jovi. You referenced it before. I saw you guys at Madison Square Garden. So now talk about for yourself. You were born in the New York area. You lived upstate New York. What did it mean for you playing in the Garden?
Oh, it was just a validation of everything that, a musician could hope for. I mean, obviously Madison Square Garden is the venue, Led Zeppelin there 7-10 nights, it's just countless bands that have played there, and it's like, I want to have my feet on the same stage that Jimmy Page was, or, Kiss played there, or whoever it was, and there's such an aura to that venue,
Yep.
I think Billy Joel did a residency there, right? I mean, he did like 100 shows there.
He's still doing it.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
I think he's up to like 130 shows now.
All right. So, just to be in the building is one thing, but to be on the stage is just just an amazing thing. So
yep.
We played 3 nights. There was Bon Jovi did 3 nights there.
Right. Yep. So like you said before, the band is, doing good things, 86, 87. We were talking about before that you were getting more songwriting on the albums, but then in 88, you're no longer with Keel. So what happened there and why'd you leave?
Well, I think 87 was, even though we had the huge Bon Jovi tour, I think it was 13, 14 shows on the East Coast with those guys. We came out of that tour and we were back in clubs, and we didn't latch on to another tour that year, which I thought was just, what the hell? We just came off the biggest rock tour of the year, in terms of audience numbers. That Bon Jovi Silvery Wet tour just was massive,
Sure.
So I thought we had all this, momentum to us, and then we didn't even tour with another band that year. It was scattered dates with other, we might have done a few shows up in the Bay Area with Y&T, but no big tour after that. And I don't think the album charted as high as the Final Frontier. We only got one video. Well, we actually did 2 videos in 87. One from the album, Somebody's Waiting, and then we did a video for Rock and Roll Outlaw too, but that wasn't on the Keel album. That was on a soundtrack. Right. So 87 was a big disappointment, and everybody's frustrated, everybody's finger pointing, and armchair quarterbacking and everything, and I think Ron thought we should go in a more commercial direction and brought in a keyboard player, and I didn't get it,
Okay.
I didn't get that at all. As a matter of fact, in my entire career, I've never played in a band with keyboards. My high school bands or bands leading up to Keel or bands after Keel. I got nothing against keyboards, but it's not the stuff that's embedded in me.
Sure.
Bands that I grew up. All right, you can make the argument that Deep Purple used rock keyboards, amazing.
Right.
UFO had Paul Raymond that kind of augmented the sound.
Very different than the keyboards in the 80s with the Bon Jovis, which I happen to like also, but very different than the 80s keyboard sounds.
Yeah, I agree. So anyways, I just felt I don't want to be a thorn in his side. I had my own vision on where I think we should go, and I just wasn't happy in the band anymore. So I was confident enough in my abilities I was going to land on my feet, and I did.
Right. So now I'm thinking about what you said before, how you guys almost played some shows with Metallica, and I have to wonder, gee, had you played with Metallica and their fan base took to you, could things have been different for the band, for Keel?
Well, I think that was the big one that got away. You talk about fishing, the big one that got away. That was the big tour that got away.
Sure, that's understandable. So you mentioned before that you wrote with Ace Frehley, which was on his '89 album. But before we talk about that, I really want to talk about something that I find so fascinating. And I don't know the details around this, so I'm going to pick your brain on this one a bit, if you don't mind. In that time period, you also wrote 3 songs, I believe, with Peter Criss. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, you've done your research. I did. I wrote with Peter, went to his house. We wrote several songs, and, 'cause he was doing records back then. And to be honest with you, I don't know where those little demos are. It was so long ago. We wrote these things together, and there's just nothing ever came of it. But
what type of songs? Were they rock songs? Were they ballads? What type of songs were they?
No, I remember them being, straight down the middle rock songs,
Okay.
But yeah, I still have maintained a friendship with Peter, and it's kind of interesting that I wrote with Peter and Ace, and had the recording relationship with Gene.
Yep.
So I guess if I can write something with Paul, I'll complete the circle.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Now, do you remember any of the song titles by any chance? Because I'm always fascinated, because Peter didn't do a whole lot during this time. So the fact that you wrote songs with him, I find fascinating.
Yeah, I honestly don't. And, I actually demoed song. I actually have demoed a song with Kurt Como that we wrote for Gene, and Gene sang on it. I don't have that demo either. So it was called "Let Sleeping Girls Lie." I thought it was a great Kiss title. I mean, if that had Gene Simmons sex title to it, that was the one.
Absolutely.
And, nothing that didn't go anywhere either.
That's wow.
I didn't write that. I didn't write that with Gene, but he did a rough demo of it.
That's awesome. Now, the Peter songs, did Peter sing them? Do you remember?
Again, you're rolling back the clock here 30
Yeah,
years.
I told you I wanted to pick your brain a little, because this one I found so fascinating.
Yeah, I remember that he did. I remember that he did.
Wow.
But he had a band too. I think he had a band back then. Again,
he was doing Balls of Fire in like '86. That's the only thing he did. He did a few shows with them, but yeah, I find that very fun. I'd love to know who has copies of those songs, because again, there's really not a whole lot Peter released from '82, '83 until like '92. So you could be sitting on something that a lot of fans would be interested in there, but unfortunately you don't have a copy of them.
I don't. I don't. I don't even know what, other than like calling Peter, and don't think I don't know if he was in the best emotional place back then either. I'm not sure where to find him.
Sure. So then, like you said, you wrote with Ace Frehley also, and the song 5 Card Stud appeared on his Trouble Walking album. So talk about how that song came about, because if you believe some of the stories, some of the songs on those albums, people have said Richie Scarlett wrote a lot and Ace kind of tagged his name on them. 5 Card Stud, is that your riff also, the way Right to Rock was?
Well, I'm going to level with you.
Go ahead.
I wrote the song 100%.
That's what I was asking. Yep. I'm not surprised.
His manager at the time was playing hardball. He goes, anybody that's got a song on this record, Ace has got to have his name on it. So, I was kind of backed into that corner. But yeah, that was me 100%.
Wow.
And I think Oni might have even sung the demo for that. I think Oni, because that was around the time that Oni, 89, Oni was, still with me. And now I'm pretty sure Oni sang the demo on it.
Wow.
And I don't have that original.
Marc, you had to keep this stuff. Come on, you're killing me.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Oni sang it. You can ask him.
I will. I'll have to when I have him on. Did you write that song especially for Ace, or was that a song that you wrote thinking, hey, maybe one day I'll record this and put this on one of my albums?
Yeah, because I was introduced to Ace through Eddie Trunk. Eddie was with Megaforce at the time.
Yep.
And he said, Ace is looking for songs. What do you got? So, Ace put us together. I'm sorry, Eddie put me together.
Right. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remember Ace's reaction were you there when he heard Five Card Stud, or did you just hand it off and then next thing you knew it was on the album?
Well, there was some back and forth on it, there was some back and forth on it, but obviously he liked it enough. It's totally him, right?
I agree.
He's a five.
Absolutely. Now, just to kind of close the Kiss loop, you mentioned before that you wrote, or worked with 3 of the 4 original members. You've also worked with Tommy Thayer, the current Kiss guitarist, on one of your latest solo albums as well, right?
Well, Tommy and I were actually, Tommy and I, our career paths and our friendship, goes right back to the beginning when I moved to LA.
Sure.
We were actually roommates for a while, and well, this was after Keel. First of all, Black and Blue and Keel opened for Queensryche in '86.
Right.
That was the 3-band bill, and then Tommy and I were roommates. Our third roommate was Todd Jensen, who is now the bass player in Journey. So, we were the 3 Musketeers together. And I wrote quite a few songs with Tommy. Matter of fact, Tommy co-wrote 4 on the Floor on the Cold Sweat album.
Right. Yep.
And we wrote songs for Japanese bands. When Tommy and I were flown over to Japan together. There was a band called Still Alive that recorded one of our songs.
Yep.
So yeah, Tommy and I wrote quite a few things together, and on my solo album and also on the first Medicine Wheel album, he had a couple of co-writes.
Right. Yep. Now, do you still talk to him?
I just had lunch with him.
Oh, did you really?
As a matter of fact, it said the same day I saw Aerosmith, I had lunch with Tommy in the afternoon.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yes.
Doing great.
Awesome. So you mentioned Cold Sweat before, right? Which was the band that you started after you left Keel. You put out one album, had great reviews, but the band never really took off. Why do you think that was the case?
Well, it's a lot of factors with that, obviously in 1990, that album came out a year too late, that album should have come out in 88. I did the original demos for that album in 88, and it could have came out in 88, except it didn't, and it only left us in 89, and it took us 6 months to find another singer. And by the time we found Roy and recorded the album, it came out in June of 1990. And by that time, everybody was just had their fill of commercial hard rock. Every label had 10, 15 hair bands.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like eating the same thing every night. You get tired of it.
Sure.
And that was around the time, as we all know, that musical tastes were starting to shift, And so I think we just kind of got lost in that shuffle, and our A&R guy was fired, during that whole period. So we didn't have our cheerleader at the label anymore.
Sure.
So, I've said this before, that success in the music business is kind of like running a relay race, right? You have the first guy that takes their lap around the track and hands the baton on to the second guy. And the second guy takes his lap around the track and hands the baton to the third guy, okay?
Right.
So we took our lap around the track and we handed off the musical baton.
Yep.
But somewhere around the next couple laps, the baton was dropped, That's the way I've always looked at it, MCA wasn't known as being a great rock label to begin with. They had a lot of bands on there generically similar to us. And we had great management. Wendy Dio was our manager, got us good publishing deals, good tours. Cold Sweat toured a fair amount that year.
Yep.
But it was just like, it was just trying to climb a rope that's slippery. As hard as you try to climb that rope, you're not going to climb.
Well, like you said, the music scene was changing in the early 90s. When grunge hit and Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all those bands, were you a fan, or did you see that? I was like, it was killing your music and you hated it?
No. Of the aforementioned bands that I loved Soundgarden. Soundgarden to me was Sabbath. Was,
absolutely.
It was just new iteration of Sabbath.
Yep.
And of course, Chris Cornell, what a voice, right?
Incredible.
I didn't dislike the other bands. I just, by that, I'm a '70s guy, man. That's the stuff that really resonates with me. Although there's some of my contemporaries I really really like. King's X, like one of my favorite bands in the world.
Sure.
Queensryche, love Queensryche. The Black Crowes. When they came along in 1990, I was like, these guys are fresh. These guys have boiled it down to the essence of rock.
Sure. Sure.
So, but the grunge stuff, I didn't resonate with it as much.
Right. Now, I asked that because, and I know this was before they took off a bit, but you also had a hand in helping Pantera, who was popular in the 90s, get a record contract. So talk about how you helped help them along the way in their early years. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, a lot of this, just so your listeners know, at marcferrari.com, a lot of this is up there. Okay.
Is that okay?
So Pantera came to the first Keel show in Texas that we did, 1985, and that's how I met those guys. They came on our bus, and Daryl was still 18 years old when I first met him, and Projects in the Jungle was the album that they played for me. And, that was a much different band than it was than what they became, as we know.
Yes.
It was Motley Crue meets Dokken with a little Judas Priest in there,
Right. And he wasn't Dimebag yet either.
I started with, I was Diamond Daryl back then.
Yeah.
And Rex Rocker.
Yeah.
But I immediately, started waving the Pantera flag as high and loud as I could. And I did get them their first record. They actually were signed to Gold Mountain Records, before their Echo. And I got them their first national press in Metal Edge. And I brought A&R people to see them, including Rob Cavallo, who became the president of Warner Brothers years later. Somewhere out there's a video of me and Rob jamming with them.
Oh, wow.
But I did everything in my power at that point to, just to try to share with the world what I already knew,
Right.
that these guys were amazing.
Right. Now, obviously, their style changed a bit, as we got into the early 90s. Were you into them and their style of music as they evolved in the next few years, or did you kind of away from them?
It's kind of like a proud father, I knew they had greatness in them. By the way, you probably know that they recorded a song of mine on Power Metal.
Yep.
Their Power Metal album, they recorded the song "Proud to Be Loud," which was originally demoed for Keel.
Yep.
And the Keel version appears on Back in Action.
Yep.
But so that was the first album with Phil, and that album was definitely heavier than the predecessor, and then every album after that just got heavier and heavier.
Yep, absolutely. What do you think of the band, what they're doing today? Obviously, unfortunately, Daryl and Vinny both passed away. They can only do so much now, but what do you think of the new tour that they're doing now as Pantera?
Is it Pantera? I don't know.
That's
I have mixed feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I have mixed feelings about it. Look, I am still close with Rex, and it's not my position to, pontificate on the validity of what, who goes out in what form. They have permission from the various estates. So I think as long as they certainly got the right band members to replace the Abbotts, but I don't know. It's kind of like Thin Lizzy went out without Phil Lynott. It's like, okay, they had some strong lineups, but I mean, come on, Phil Lynott was the heart and soul of Thin Lizzy,
Sure.
And the Abbotts started that band with, I think Rex was, there in the very beginning, but, look, if they're doing it the right way and with respect and then I guess, by all means, let them do what they want to do.
Fair enough. Now, I know one of the things I love is that in the 90s, you kind of reinvented yourself a little bit. You started writing songs for TV. I think you had some songs in the 1996 Olympics, if I remember right. So how did you get involved in doing that type of songwriting compared to your earlier part of your career?
Well, I started my publishing company back in like 92, and it started out as a little, as a little thing, and then it grew very quickly. And I happened, in the case of the Olympics, I happened to know who the music supervisor was, and she told me that they were looking for like a theme song that would kind of encapsulate, certain emotions and feelings that the athletes were going through. And so I came up with the title "Capture the Dream," and I brought in my two friends, Paul Taylor from Winger and Stan Bush, who was an artist in his own right.
Yep.
And the three of us, it was a great collaboration. I remember I had the title, I had the melody of the title, and Paul, crafted a lot of the music, and Stan wrote the lyric and sang it. And that was used a lot, not only in that Olympic, but several Olympics after that.
Wow. What is it like for you as an artist and a songwriter? One hand, you playing the garden, playing some of the songs you wrote. And then another hand, you're watching TV, and millions of people are watching on the TV, but they don't know who the songwriter is. What is the difference for you as an artist? And do you prefer one over the other?
It's a different feeling, I mean, look, it's anytime your song is on a radio or whatever, it's a validation of, of your art,
Sure.
It'd be no different than a painter who has a painting hung in a gallery, Yep. It's like, all right, I've arrived, or I'm being validated, by my art. So, hearing my songs on TV is wonderful, hearing them on the radio or on, the old Keel still gets played on, MTV once in a while. It's kind of, I'll take it all. Let's put it that way.
Right. Now, I didn't mention this, and it was around the early 90s time period, but you also appeared in Wayne's World, which I love, and so many people love that movie. What was that experience like for you filming that movie?
No, it's tremendous. Who wouldn't have a good time hanging out with Mike Myers and Dana Carvey and Chris Farley and Brian Doyle Murray and all those guys. Amazing experience. Penelope Spheris brought me into that project. She directed the Keel video for Rock and Roll Outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that happened. And
you were in both Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, the band wasn't in as much in Wayne's World 2.
Right.
Didn't have a big of a role, but yes, I'm in both of them. Yeah.
Yep. And good.
I'm lobbying for them to do Wayne's World 3 so they can have the trilogy,
Sounds like a good plan to me. So, oh man. So, we mentioned before that you did some publishing. I know you wrote for Metal Edge, I think, and you've also wrote some books, right? Your first book was Rockstar 101, Rockstar's Guide to Survival and Success in the Music Business. So what made you decide to now go into writing and putting out a book?
It's another form of expression. That's all I can tell you. A song, whether you're an artist, whether you're a sculptor, a songwriter, it's a form of expression. So, in the case of the Rockstar 101, I had so many people ask me about the business end of things that I decided to answer it. And the second book was written originally for and about my daughter, who was always time challenged. So it was kind of a love story for her, and she was the inspiration for it, and fortunately, I got a publishing deal on that, and that's book number 2. So,
and let's tell the viewers and listeners what the name of that one is, because that's an interesting one.
Don't dilly dally, silly Sally.
I love it.
Expression. Yeah, it just kind of came out of me one day, and it's like anything else creatively. Sometimes you don't know where that inspiration comes from; it just comes.
Right. And what I love about that is I have to figure that the clientele buying that book probably had no idea who Marc Ferrari was. This is just a book for kids, and you either buy it because you want to read it to your kids, or you're not necessarily only selling that to the Keel fans or the rock fans of the world?
It definitely is a broader audience, because it's not, as you mentioned, just not rock fans, but anybody that has a child that's time challenged. But in that case, I went from the stage to the page. That's the way I look at it.
I love it. I love that. Now, you mentioned your daughter, and I know I've seen you post online that you go to concerts with her and she likes rock music. And I think sometime a couple of months ago, I saw that you posted that you went to see My Chemical Romance with her. Now, I'll be honest, I saw My Chemical Romance 3 times this year. I happen to think they're a great band. Do you keep up with new rock music? Do you like it? Or is it just like a father-daughter bonding moment?
Well, I try to. I want to be knowledgeable. When my daughter asks me about, have you listened to this? Or she sends me playlists all the time. So,
Nice.
I get the benefit of having, someone with eyes and ears to the ground on what's current, what's hip.
Yep. Is there any new rock bands that you listen to that you say, hey, I really like this band, that she turned you on to?
Well, My Chemical Romance being one, there's a great singer-songwriter named Adrienne Lenker that she's like the female Elliott Smith, and she turned me on to that. And I couldn't stop listening to her for the longest time. It was just incessant. So yeah, and again, her playlists, a lot of these artists that are out now, they don't have the same kind of volume of work, let's say.
Yep.
That bands, some of them come and go pretty quickly, but yeah, I try to stay current. I don't want to be an old fuddy-duddy,
Right. So when that guy that used to produce you back in the 80s, Gene Simmons, says rock is dead, do you agree with him then?
No, I don't agree with him at all. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think maybe the bit, I think what he was referring to is that the business of it has changed, and unfortunately, music has been devalued a lot.
So true.
In the last 10, 15 years. And it's come to the point now where a lot of artists don't even want to release new music. There's not a lot of financial benefit to do it.
Yeah. Sad but true.
Paul and Gene have both gone on record saying that.
Yeah.
I think that's where his frustration was. He said rock is, but rock. Look, there's so many good kick-ass bands still out there now. So I disagree with Gene, and a lot of people have come out disagreeing with him.
And there's nothing wrong with that. He's not always right.
You're right about that.
So I know you said there's not a lot of money in music these days, and that's so true. But would you ever consider maybe one song Keel or one song Cold Sweat, like releasing one more song?
That's part of our game plan now, is it being single based rather than album based, and I have a feeling you'll hear new music from both bands in 2023. I'll just say got the inside scoop on that.
Well, that's exciting news. I know a lot of fans will be excited when they hear that. And what about any touring plans for 2023 with either of the bands?
Not touring, but maybe scattered dates.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And the songs, are they going to be new songs that you're writing, or songs that you maybe wrote back in the 80s? And
well, in the case of Keel, it'll be new songs. In the case of Cold Sweat, there's some unfinished demos that we're looking to get out there.
That is awesome news. And is it safe to say it'll be sometime in 2023, early, late? Do you have any idea at all, or is it too early to say?
Too early to say, but if you're a betting man, I'd bet on hearing some new music in 2023.
Well, that sounds like a very exciting way to end this. Is there anything else, Marc, that you want your fans to know about? To me, you have an amazing career. Like I started off saying, whether it's the music, whether it's the TV stuff, whether it's, the books you've written, that you've done so much. You've worked with so many different artists. Anything else you want your fans to know about?
Well, just to keep the faith, I'm very grateful that there are still fans out there of our genre of music. And for that, I'm very grateful, and just know that, both bands are, doing our best to, put something out there next year for everybody. And, both bands would play whenever we get invited to play, awesome. Whether it's a cruise, whether it's a festival, whether it's a flying date, as an opening band for someone else. So, as long as we get asked, we'll do it. So
that's just awesome.
Keep supporting music. both live music and recorded music. That's all I can say, because it helps everybody.
Absolutely. Well, Marc, I want to wish you, your family, a happy holiday time period. Please thank your mother for popping on for a moment and saying hello. That was awesome as well. And hopefully she's got a good dinner cooking in there.
That's her first interview appearance of any time. So you have an exclusive.
I have 2 exclusives then. New music coming in 2023 and Mama Ferrari on a video interview for the first time. So Marc, thank you so much. This is a blast.
All right.
Take it easy.
Party on.
Alrighty, there you have it. I'd like to thank Marc for joining me, giving me the inside scoop of what's coming up for Keel and Cold Sweat the year 2023. I also know I speak on behalf of a lot of fans, especially Kiss fans, that are going to say we really enjoyed hearing all of your stories. Thanks so much, Marc. I really appreciated it. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You could also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.